This is TWiT.
Microsoft yesterday revealed via a Microsoft Learn support document, frankly, that they were killing the Windows subsystem for Android. This is the thing that
not
brings
the Windows subsystem for Linux.
Yeah, right. Although there's some, overlap there, obviously. But
I was kind of surprised by this. Is this a big? It feels like a big story.
So depending on your perspective, this is either the apocalypse or So
do you think it must have been that nobody really was using it?
See, this is the thing, we don't know. So there's different directions to go on the cause of this, right? So for people who don't know, Microsoft, it's an optional feature in Windows. You enable it and it allows you to install the Android App Store, or the Amazon App Store for Android, which obviously is the Amazon store. And then from there, you can install Android apps. When Microsoft first announced this feature, June 2021 whatever year Windows 11 came out, they described this as a store within a store experience, because remember at the time they were talking up this notion that we're going to allow other stores in our store, something that Apple and Google were not allowing at the time.
Right.
And it never really happened to my knowledge. And this product certainly is not that. Like I said, if you could search the Microsoft store for Kindle. If you click on the install button, it actually installs the Amazon App Store, and then you can go from there. The problem, it's not a problem, but it is another store. It is another place, another point of updating. We already have all these different ways the system can be updated. Android apps today are updated through the Amazon App Store, right? They're not updated through the Microsoft Store. It's not a store within a store experience. It's a completely separate experience. The Amazon App Store, for those who don't know, is incredibly lackluster. Microsoft at one point claimed there were over 50,000.
You thought you saw a bad app store. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, you thought this would make you pine for the heady days of the Windows 8 Windows Store, and all those fart apps that we used to joke about. But this thing is horrible, and there might be a dozen or less decent apps. Kindle's in there, Amazon, what do you call it? Audible is in there. I think the Wall Street Journal app is in there. One airline might be in there. It's lackluster. Obviously, what everyone wants is the Google Play Store.
Yes.
I don't know if anyone's following the story. These two companies hate each other. And every time I think there's going to be a little detente or something, it's not happening. And there is a deep cultural hatred of Microsoft at Google that was put in place, not formally, but is because of the founders. They hate Microsoft, feared Microsoft back then, thought Microsoft would try to kill them because that was their MO. And it persists to this day. And it makes me sad because there's a lot of shared customers there, and there's a lot of cross-platform experiences that could be so much better if these guys would just work together. And it's too bad. Google has a very unfamiliar product that is so unfamiliar. I don't know the exact name, but I think it's called Play Games for Windows. You can look this up, and it's another Android emulation system. It's specifically for Google Play Games. There's some selection of games. It seems to be more popular in Asia. The type of games you see there are not the type of thing I would be interested in personally, but they were super clear when they announced this that we are not using Microsoft's technology. This is our own thing. It's offline. It's on device. It's not streaming. It's not WSA. And here we are, whatever, a couple of years later, and so how many people use this? Probably not too many. We know the quality of the store and the apps is lackluster at best. We know Google's not happening. And they've canceled it. And so now, Leo asked, what's the reason?
I'm wondering if it's just because nobody used it, right? I mean,
that's one of the top contenders. The other one is that, it is, right?
It didn't have what you wanted in it. And it was a beast.
And it was never going to get there. Now, we'll never know what the dynamics are here. Did Microsoft go to them and get promises that, don't worry, we're going to have X number of top tier titles. It's going to be a real draw. I don't know. Look, speaking semi-theoretically, the notion of Android apps on Windows is kind of cool, right? Because it can fill some holes. A lot of the action with app development these days is happening on web or mobile, not on Windows. So,
for sure,
just
from
like
a dev perspective, how you can experience the app without having to go to a device. But we have emulators for that. But I would argue WSA was better than the emulator.
There are, yes, right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how these. Well, you probably do. You talk to these folks, but I assume it's based on some sort of Hyper-V / whatever virtualization technology.
It's a virtualization. It's really a race to see which one can consume more memory in the least amount.
Okay, that's hilarious. I was literally, as you were saying that, I was just thinking in my brain. One of the nice things about Hyper-V when it hits the client back in Windows 7? No, 8. Windows 8 was. They did that work to make it work more efficiently on systems that would be connected to battery, not power, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's whatever. It is what it is. But
it's the reason that devs tend to use gaming worktops to do work because they need that much power. They just, and I always have the animation of the jet engine firing it up as Afterburner. It's like, oh, did you start Android Studio again? Like all fans pick up, everything runs hot.
Yeah, anyone who's run an Android emulator from Android Studio for whatever reason, typically for a developer, right, will know that what you just said is, if anything, an understatement. It is those things are dog slow. They're terrible,
astonishing. Yeah. And the machines keep getting faster, and they somehow this doesn't. And one would argue that WSA could have been made more efficient, but not without. You don't get those optimization devs until you show enough customer utilization.
It's a chicken and egg thing. And I don't, like I said, I don't know. We don't know the dynamic. I don't know if Amazon went to Microsoft and said, we're not seeing the usage to warrant the investment on our side.
Yeah.
We don't know what direction it went. We do know that Amazon has sent out letters to its customers that kind of point the finger at Microsoft, but not too directly because, again, partnering on this thing.
Right.
It's too bad. Obviously, the Amazon App Store continues forward on Amazon's Kindle Fire tablets and on Fire TV and wherever else they use these apps. But it's not. No one wants this, right? This is not what anyone. Even Amazon's own customers would prefer, Google Play, right? So, anyway, we'll see.
Google won't tolerate it. You have to go buy one of their Android devices.
Yep. Well, or Microsoft could pay that license fee, right? I mean, they could roll that into the cost.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft could do it. They just haven't. So I don't. It's not happening, right? I mean, they would have just done that and would have made Amazon one of the choices, and no one would have used it. But they literally just killed it. So my theory is that this actually has to do with AI, which I know is a bit of a stretch, and it's got a little bit of a conspiracy theory element to it. But I think Microsoft as a whole, which, again, is really a million different little fiefdoms, have been given a directive. You have to make sense in this world. Just like when Satya Nadella became CEO, you have to make sense in this cloud world, which is how we got, Windows as a service and whatever. And, Windows was the one business that didn't make a lot of sense there. I don't know. There's no AI story here, right? There was never a great developer story, although I suppose for developers writing Android apps on Windows, maybe this was a slightly better thing, I guess. But this isn't what, targeting a very specific app or mobile platform, whatever platform in this day and age, maybe isn't the most common thing, right? Unless you're an Apple guy, and then we could have a different conversation. But
because Apple keeps that space pretty narrow.
Right. I mean, the developers who are sticking with Windows or Linux are probably web developers or some form of cross-platform something. And yes, running an Android emulator to check out an app before you get it on an actual device is fine, but
if it was faster, it's not always faster.
Yeah, it might not have been reason enough.
They were pretty heavy.
But throw out your theories. I mean, we can all guess.
It's hard to imagine Microsoft as resource constrained, but they are. Right? That's the truth. Right. The basic argument that this doesn't show as a principal path forward and had some serious obstacles that it had a couple of years to overcome and had failed. And at some point, the VP says, I'm not hanging my career on this anymore. Let it go.
I bet if you were to go back and look at the coverage of the original Windows 11 announcement, which I guess I'm not sure. I can't think of the year. It must have been 2020, June, right? And this would have been the biggest fee. We're going to refine the UI, simpler, yada yada. Okay, cool. Android apps. I bet those were the biggest changes, like people talked about at the time. And the reality was not just slow to market. Remember, they didn't make the original release of Windows 11. It came out in preview later that year.
There's a basic gate here. If you can't get Google Play on board, you should stop.
It's not Android, yeah. Right.
You're done.
Yeah.
That's where people go.
The company that made Windows RT should know that something that looks like something but is not something.
Is a problem.
Yep.
And and to exactly that point, it's like take those very talented people who built that thing and get them working on ARM stuff, because that has a bigger future.
See,
nobody wants Chemrog's cornflakes. They want the real thing.
Right.
Chemrog's.
Good. Now you're cooking with fire.
Vector lead oxides.
I don't even know what I'm talking about. I think that was a RoboCop reference, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I don't know. Interesting. You just brought up Windows and ARM. I mean, arguably, our Android apps would run better on Windows and ARM, right? I mean,
closer to the chipset,
right? I know you can target Intel on Android. I don't know if anyone does, but I mean, for 10 seconds about 10 years ago, there were Intel-based Android tablets you could buy. I mean, that was a thing briefly. I don't know. Anyway, it's dead, and I don't know how to feel about it. I never liked it. I never used it. I don't feel like most other people did. But then again, like everything else in our little part of the world, when something like this happens, you hear from every single person that loved this thing. You know,
all 5 of them.
No, you really do every time.
Yeah.
You also hear from the people who never used it but are still outraged, because this is the world we live in now. We get outraged about everything. Someone should bring Microsoft to a class action lawsuit. Did you ever use this? No, but whatever. You know, like it's
not saying I'll be in the lawsuit.
Yeah. It's a strange time to be alive, but I don't know. I guess I feel ambivalence about it, except for anyone who has followed Microsoft for as long as we all have knows that there's a rich history of things that were presented as the biggest thing in the world briefly. They kind of disappeared. No one talked about it for a while, and then it was dead. You know,
like Connect, Vision Pro. It happens.
Vision Pro. Nice.
I have
there's a shot.
I have to throw that into every show now because it really drives
and
crazy. The
story I wrote about Apple canceling their smart car efforts, I wrote that flush with the success of Vision Pro, Apple has decided to scale back its more experimental.
That's good. That's good. I need little subtle digs like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta, it has to be subtle enough that you're like 2 sentences later, and then the person reading it or hearing it says, wait, what? What did you just say?
Or they're so in the can for Apple that they go, oh yeah, see?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, I told you.
I never hear from those guys. Are there still some of those people, Leo? I don't even know.
Oh, there are.
Of course there are.
I don't know where they go.
There's still somebody out there pining for the Watson, I'm sure.
I like that in the debate, we're not going to talk about any of the Apple antitrust today, except I'm going to go on for half an hour about it right now. The 2 sides of this debate are literally like prolonged, logical, legal debates about what Apple is doing is terrible. And then the other side saying, I think they should be able to do whatever they want. And like, that's literally the depth of the argument.
That's literally the argument, right?
Yeah, there. That's it. That's the whole argument. Yeah. You'll never find someone who could like lay out like a really logical, long-winded thing that actually makes sense why their behavior is okay. You won't find it.
Yeah. Hey, it's me, Leo Laporte. I hope you've enjoyed this little snippet from Windows Weekly. If you want to see more and want to catch the whole show, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast client or visit our website, twit.tv/WW. And of course, there's links right below me.